Good afternoon and welcome. It's so wonderful to see this room filled with so many housing advocates. Today marks the Housing Development Consortium of Seattle King County's 16th annual celebration. I'm Kate Smith. I'm the HDC board president and a principal with SMR Architects. Thank you for being here today to show your commitment to affordable housing. This is a celebration of our collective wins over the past year and to highlight opportunities to continue on the wave of successes in 2024. Why are we HDC members? Because housing is the foundation for health, success, and inclusive communities. Because we are committed to producing, preserving, and increasing equitable access to affordable housing. Because we worry about what the future brings. Because our collective voices ignite action and change. Because HDC is a movement. I want to take a moment to recognize our elected officials whose responsibility to affordable housing and dedication to public service is vital to this movement. The Seattle Housing Levy, the Covenant Homeownership Act, and many other policy wins could not have made it past the finish line without you. Elected officials, please stand. And now we recognize and thank the generosity of our program sponsors. Through their sponsorship, every dollar donated today goes directly to support HDC's ongoing work. Every level of sponsorship supports our programs, our member meetings, policy and advocacy, communications and outreach, as well as day-to-day operations, which in turn supports all of you. Please hold your applause until we recognize all of the program sponsors. Thank you to our presenting sponsors, Amazon, JP Morgan Chase, and Lisk Puget Sound. Thank you to our champion supporters, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Wells Fargo. Thank you to our ambassador sponsors, BECU, Bridge Housing, Compass Construction, Beacon Construction, Enterprise Community Partners, Heritage Bank, Imagine Housing, Lehigh, MARPAC, Microsoft, the City of Renton and Renton Housing Authority, Salesforce, Schemata Workshop, SMR Architects, SRM Affordable Housing, Turner Construction Company, PWG Development, Vitus Group LLC, and Wright Ronstead and Company. Many thanks to our advocate sponsors and to our ally sponsors. The big list. We also want to give a special thank you to our event photographer, Bill Wright, with William Wright Photography, who's been with us over the years, and to Lucy McCord, who helped in the photo booth today. Please join me in thanking all of our sponsors. Before I introduce Patience Malaba, I would like to express my deepest appreciation for the HDC staff. Without them, we wouldn't be here today. Like literally, you wouldn't be sitting here. So thank you, Lauren Tierney, Dan Cantrell, Bambi Chavez, Jesse Simpson, Danny Turk, Joanne Gonzalez, Tyler Paris. Are you going to put an extra zero? When we get to the donation part. I said Dan Weisbeck and Laura Frankie. Will you all please stand? Also, we have an extraordinary board of directors at HDC who I'm lucky to collaborate with. Will you all please stand to be recognized for your commitment and leadership? So now I would like to welcome HDC's Executive Director, Patience Malaba. Your passion for equitable, inclusive, and safe communities is inspiring to us all. I'm continually amazed at everything you're able to accomplish in one day. I don't think you sleep. You're always so cool and calm and collected. You are a leader in this sector, creating a movement. Please welcome Patience Malaba.
Wow. Thank you, Kate. And thanks for your support and leadership and that of all of the HDC Board of Directors over this past 2 years. And a massive thank you to all of the HDC staff for the incredible work they do. What an incredible turnout. What a room. I mean, I can't avoid just looking around and looking at this impressive room full of people who do incredible work in our region. And it's because of all of you that we have had an amazing run. It's been a lot of fun. It's been incredible collaborating with many of you. And we've gotten into some really good trouble together. But you know what? We are just getting started. In our work, it's a long horizon. Like building a cathedral, often those who start the work don't get to see the work realized in their community. That's why it's so important when we can see the wins, when we not only get to break ground, but we live to see the days when people move in. So this past year, not only did we lay the groundwork, it just felt amazing to see some serious victories in our own time. Some of you might recall, when we met last year, Mayor Harrell announced the historic Seattle Housing Levy on this stage, charging us collectively to continue the work that began in 1986 so we may move our region forward. And on the stage, we acknowledge that we did it. We went to work, we stood together. The voters believed in us and they bet on us. And in this room, I can guarantee you that HDC members will leverage those funds and close the gap on safe, affordable housing. Yeah, we can clap on that. I just want to say one more time how inspiring it is to look around this room and see so many of our HDC members. Because HDC is the embodiment of a collective housing sector. We represent millions of people. We bring over 220 organizations into a membership association, and all of us dedicated to increasing affordable housing, to increasing access to affordable housing. We do the hard work. We dream big, our members dream big, and we get things done. So we've had an incredible year, and we have a lot of accomplishments that I could spend an hour here telling you about them. But I don't want to keep you that long. So I'm going to move quickly to some highlights, and then we'll talk about some of the forward-looking pieces. But last year, we brought about a dramatic increase in resources for affordable housing through the Seattle Housing Levy. Now get some hands for that. We led the effort to help design and pass the first in the nation Covenant Homeownership Account program, which will give significant amount of down payment assistance to people whose access to homeownership has been impacted by racially restrictive covenants. We understand that the urgency of the housing crisis is compounded by the growing climate crisis and the persistent institutional and structural racism. So we launched our Decarbonize Affordable Housing Program, which is working to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in our affordable multi-family buildings. I'm running out of time, so let's hold the applause. We've supported our county executive, Constantine, whom you will hear from in not too long, on other significant regional wins for the Crisis Care Centers levy, as well as the Veterans Seniors Human Services levy. All of these levies investing critically at the core nexus of housing and other important issues like mental health and disability. And across the state, we've also had major wins for affordable housing. And thank you to our state legislators who I see around this room for your unwavering commitment and support. We've definitely had some serious wins, and it took a lot of work to get to this point. But I want to emphasize that we have great opportunities in front of us to make meaningful change for affordability. We have the once-in-a-decade consequential decisions on comprehensive plan updates that are in front of us, with coalitions in Seattle, with a coalition in East King County. I see my co-chair, Joel Fain, over there, and we're working in East King County to support that. We have bills that did not pass at the state level to support the stability of residents. We have bills that did not pass to invest resources in affordable housing. And we will lay the groundwork to get those across the finish line in 2025. But I want to highlight that as much as we have opportunity, some real challenges remain. We're confronting an existential crisis in our housing communities across the region, with some of the towering concerns, whether we're talking to housing providers or residents themselves, is stability and safety. A lot of residents and providers are grappling with operational challenges. And this is coming at the compounding effects of the fentanyl crisis and the untreated mental illness. And it behooves all of us, as I look across this room, the public, philanthropy, elected officials, developers, and investors, for us to think about how we change systems, how we invest resources to support people and give them the best care that suits their needs. And as I say that, I want to encourage all of us. We must harness the collective energy that I look around and see in this room, the commitment that I know we all have to tackle this pressing challenge head on, because we are the ones to do it. This last year proves that we can do it, and we will do it. Thank you for all you've done so far. Thank you for continuing to invest in hope, for continuing to persist in the face of daunting work. Because alone, each of us is formidable, but together we are unstoppable, united by our shared commitment of creating a future where everyone can come home. Thank you. And now I have the honor of introducing this year's Kala Okiwe Award winner. The Kala Okiwe Award is given annually to an individual who has chosen to commit to exemplary contributions to affordable housing, and they have a clear commitment to our common purpose. And for those of you who know this year's awardee, you know that she has the qualifications that perfectly align with that. Andrea Sato. Andrea is a shareholder at Kento Taylor, where she represents nonprofits, private, for-profits, public entities in financing and developing multifamily buildings. She represents clients throughout the stages of development. She has served as a member of the HDC board, both as our secretary and board president, I think twice as board president. And her commitment to affordable housing doesn't just end in our region, it's also at the national level, as well as at the city level, where she has served in the technical advisory committee of the Seattle Housing Levy in 2015, as well as just last year. I have had the incredible honor of seeing Andrea in professional spaces as well as a person. And I can tell you that her commitment of compassion, of kindness, and delivering for impact for affordable housing extends beyond her professional walls. She was a partner with me in discerning if this was the right decision to be at the helm of this organization. And I think we both agree we made the right decision. And I would like to invite Andrea to receive her award. And on behalf of the sector, thank you for your service.
Thank you, Patience, and thank you all. I am so humbled and grateful to receive this award. For all of you who know me, I don't relish this sort of spotlight, but in my small way, it's so deeply meaningful to carry on Carla's legacy. So I thank you for that. I wouldn't be here but for those who've come before me. First and foremost, my family, some of whom are with me here today. Among them, my mom, Ann Schrader Osterberg, who was one of the founding board members of HDC almost 40 years ago. And for the past 20 years, I've had the distinct honor of working with the most committed, and smart and kind colleagues at Cantor Taylor, and also the extended Cantor Taylor family, some of you who are here today as well. We face many challenges, frustrations, sometimes on a daily basis. And I couldn't be more thankful to do that with each of you each day. And to current and past HDC staff and board members, I'm inspired by your commitment and your service, especially Patience and Marty. The work we have to do is work that needs to be done together. It's our collective energy, our collective efforts that matter. I've been so honored to work with many of you in this room in building communities of opportunity and having a role in seeing buildings take shape, those buildings that become homes. But our task is harder now than it's ever been. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for bringing your collective energy, your collective commitment, and your collective passion to this work. Thank you for being a part of my journey. We are stronger together. And thank you to HDC.
Thank you, Patience, and congratulations again to this year's Carla Okigwe Award winner, Andrea Sato. Now, please welcome to the stage Daryl Smith, Executive Director with HomeSite.
Good afternoon. HDC colleagues and friends, you look awesome filling up this room. Again, I'm Daryl Smith, Executive Director of HomeSite and a proud HDC board member. See my name tag right there. And today, I want to share a personal story with you that underscores the importance of the work we do as HDC. You have a photo coming up there? I hope we have a photo coming up because I want to show you the image of my great-grandmother, Josie Stewart. There she is. Here's Josie Stewart. The image you see, we believe, is from the 1920s. And here is the matriarch of my family on my mom's side, standing in front of the home that she owns. And we know this to be true because of the actual framed deed and plat map, which is right here. Now, we know this because this document was found in my grandmother's things, Gladys Carter, after she passed away in the early 1990s. And not only did my great-grandmother Josie own her own home, but she owned several contiguous lots in Greenwood, South Carolina, which is an incredible feat for a Black woman post-Reconstruction America. Now, at some point during the Great Migration, when my grandmother traveled from Greenwood, South Carolina to the Bronx, New York, this land was lost or sold undervalued or perhaps stolen. And it wasn't until several generations later, 2 to be exact, that my mother, Josie Smith, named for my great-grandmother, came into home ownership. Now, that was a significant milestone for our family, but it took 2+ generations for that to happen. And based on that history, in creating home ownership opportunities, that's what this is all about for us. Now, last year, HDC's leadership and advocacy led to the charge in passing of the Covenant Homeownership Act that Patience mentioned earlier at the state level, making the dream of home ownership a possibility for more people like my great-grandmother Josie Stewart. And we hope that'll be rolling out later here in 2024. As a collective, We are working to change the systems so that 1,500 new low to moderate income Black families and individuals can come into home ownership. And that act will begin to repair the harm caused by many decades of systematic, racist, and discriminatory housing policies that created barriers to home ownership for so many. And I'm incredibly proud of the accomplishments and what we've been able to achieve in such a short period of time, thanks to the organizational and elected leadership that we have as partners here at HDC. And we've set a national model for our work, and other states are absolutely asking us for the playbook. We know this to be true. Patience and I went to San Francisco to speak to the NeighborWorks national organization, and lots of states are saying, hey, when you get the playbook done, pass it along. We want to look at this as well, and that's really important. Locally later here this summer, thank you. Locally here this summer, HomeSite will break ground on OLU, shown in the beautiful image there, our limited equity cooperative. Now here's the thing. This beautiful and necessary project, one of the first of its kind, a cooperative here in the Pac Northwest, wouldn't even be happening were it not for the incredible advocacy of HDC. The recently passed Seattle Housing Levy, expertly stewarded by HDC, allocated and helped to build the largest investment in homeownership dollars that we've ever seen in a levy. And this is allowing us to deliver housing options that actually keep people in Seattle. So come and visit us. We're right down at Othello Station. That big blank piece of dirt is going to have this gorgeous cooperative on it, starting to break ground this summer. Now, HDC's work, of course, spans the full spectrum of housing, from rental housing to home ownership, creating real opportunities for housing stability. Now, I want you to take a moment as you're sitting here over your salmon and think about the people for whom you are helping to create that housing stability, that health, that safety through your work in the housing sector. There have been so many lives that have been changed through your work and our collective work as HDC. Okay, you got that picture? Heads nodding, yes? All right, good. Now that you have the picture, now is the time to take out your cell phone and go to the QR code that'll be showing up here on the screen and make a meaningful contribution to the work of HDC. Now more than ever, we need your help. We need your help in building advocacy and building the dollars it takes to get the job done. Now, you can also go old school, like I tend to do, and take out a check. Those still exist. We still take those too, right? We still take those checks, right? Now, keep that picture in mind about the lives that you're changing. Make that gift in support of HDC as we continue to help individuals and families fulfill their promises for a stable home, now and for generations to come. And as you start to fill out that donation, please know that thanks to the generous support and contributions from housing leaders, from HDC leadership, our board, past and present, we have a challenge fund ahead of us. We have over $40,000 pledged, and that means that every donation of $250 or more will be matched, up to. You're going to double your impact today. Somebody started to clap for that. You can clap. I will repeat that. Every donation of $250 or more will be matched today and today only. You'll double your impact. So we're making this really easy on you this year, right? We encourage you to make your gift online or go old school, as I mentioned. Use your iPhone, use your regular phone, use your Android like me. There's Wi-Fi available here in this room. So please feel free to connect to the network HDC Celebration. And again, there are QR codes on your tables and there are links to get that done. Now, there are also a limited number of remittance cards on your tables. I believe at this time you can also use those if you prefer. Just be sure to hand your completed card to your table captain. Table captains, wave your hands right now if you're a table captain at our event today. Thank you, table captains. Patience is one. There are others at your tables. And we really thank you for your incredible generosity. Together, We are making a huge difference in our communities, working toward the solutions for a regional response to the scale of need that's out there. And I'm going to continue to think about my great-grandmother Josie. And I'm going to continue to think about this. And when my work comes in at Homesite and connected to all of the HDC's incredible work, I'm going to be thinking about my great-grandmother and what she started in our family and what I aim to finish. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Daryl, and thank you to everyone for your generous support. Now, we are honored to welcome to the stage King County Executive Dow Constantine.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you, Daryl, for a moving and personal story. I encourage you all to continue giving as we continue with the program. And I'm particularly grateful for the renewed emphasis within this organization in our region on home ownership and the building of generational wealth. It is important that people be housed. It is important that people have shelter. It is also important that people are able to participate in this economy and to build wealth for their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren. And I am very grateful to everyone here who is helping make that a reality. Good afternoon. Good enough. I am really glad to be here with you today to celebrate the remarkable collective work that the Housing Development Consortium makes possible. You know, for decades, our region, as Daryl alluded, our region has led the nation in showing how collaboration, shared priorities, and common goals can make us more effective as policymakers, as housing advocates, as funders, as developers. And at the heart of all of that leadership has been the Housing Development Consortium. I want to thank Patience and her team for their remarkable work in bringing us all together, not just for lunch, but 365 days a year to create the housing this region needs. Thank you. You know, HDC does bring together incredibly diverse, an incredibly diverse housing sector, as represented in this room, diverse in every way imaginable. And through that, we create critical connections. We create partnerships. We create the energy and the leadership that have resulted in so many wins for housing affordability and homelessness prevention over the years. Now, it's only through those connections that as a region, we can strive to ensure that everyone, that every person, regardless of income, has a place to call home. King County is committed to tackling the growing demand for affordable housing, particularly for those at the lowest income levels. We know that our investments have a life-changing impact on individuals and families who gain access to stable housing. As Patience mentioned, we've done great work in our region on housing, but old challenges persist and new emerging challenges abound. And the need continues to grow. But rising to meet this challenge will require the collective power and the collective creativity of all the people in this room and a truly regional approach. We've already seen the power of region-wide work. Programs like Health Through Housing, through which we've acquired some 1,200 units, primarily former hotels and motels, and been able to convert them into permanent supportive housing. Those are promising results, providing a variety of housing that is much needed in our community at a meaningful scale. We passed two key initiatives last year, countywide: the Crisis Care Centers Levy and the renewal of the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services Levy, investing critical resources in crisis response and in housing. Housing affordability and homelessness are intertwined crises, and they demand regional collaboration. Every jurisdiction, every partner must play its part in finding those solutions. So thank you. Thank you for your dedication to this critical cause, and thank you for doing this work together through HDC. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Gregg Colburn. Gregg is an associate professor in the Runstad Department of Real Estate at my alma mater, the College of Built Environments at the University of Washington. He publishes research on topics related to housing and homelessness and is co-author of the book, Homelessness is a Housing Problem: How Structural Factors Explain U.S. Patterns. His work has been featured in leading media outlets, including the New York Times, The Economist, Bloomberg, and NPR. And Gregg serves as co-chair of the UW's Homelessness Research Initiative, and he's a member of the National Alliance to End Homelessness Research Council. He's going to share with us the importance of scaling housing solutions in our region. Please join me in welcoming Gregg Colburn.
Thank you, Executive Constantine, for the introduction and your service to King County. I want to thank Patience and the team for having me here today. There are a lot of friendly faces in the room. In fact, I got to connect with some former students who are doing awesome housing work, which is, as a professor, pretty gratifying. My journey to this stage started in a conference room at Pacifica Law Group, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago, with gracious host Faith Pettis, and it's really fun to see how this has grown and the number of relationships that I developed in this community. You know, my family and I have lived here for about 7 years, so many of you have been here far longer than I have, but it's really fun to now not only call you colleagues, but also friends. I've been on the road a lot talking about this book. When I wrote this book, I thought I was sure my parents would read it, but beyond that, I wasn't sure if anyone else would. And so it continues to surprise me when I'm invited to come and speak about this. I also want to highlight, because I travel around the country, this region is highly, highly respected around the country. Last week, I was in Atlanta. Our colleague, Daniel Malone, who I'm sure is in the room, hosts the Housing First Partners Conference, and which was awesome. And I had the privilege of speaking there on day 2. Secretary Sean Donovan, former HUD secretary under Obama, now CEO of Enterprise Community Partners, spoke. And on the stage with him was Representative Nicole Macri. I don't know if Nicole is here, but Nicole did an awesome job of representing the state of Washington and the innovations that we have in this state to a national audience. Later that evening, I ended up randomly at this house at a reception for Sean Donovan. And when people found out I was from Seattle, you would not have believed what happened. Someone came up and said, you know, this guy gave me a tour around Seattle one time. He used to work at Habitat. I said, was it Marty Koistra? He said, yeah, it was. Someone else came up and said, I've been doing affordable housing for 20 years. Do you happen to know Susan Boyd? I said, I happen to sit on Susan's board at Bellwether. Do you know Steve Walker, the housing finance guy? I said, yes, I do. Yes, I do. And because it was all enterprise people, they said, what about M.A. Leonard? I don't know if M.A. is here. But anyway, the point is the people in this room are not only leaders in this region, they're leaders nationally. And we all collectively benefit from that work. I also want to thank Patience. It's been a real privilege to watch Patience in the transition from Marty to Patience and leading this organization. You know, sometimes you'll hear someone's name and the name fits the person, and that's certainly true in this case. Patience is not one of my best attributes, and so when I see it in another person, I admire it. And so I admire you, your patience. This is hard work. This is really hard work, and the fact that you show up every day with a smile on your face, you're persistent and patient is awesome, so thank you. So I'm going to start with a national view here and then zero in on some of the topics in the book. We have a major problem in the United States. This is from the National Low-Income Housing Coalition. This was published a month ago. This is their gap report, which shows the number of units of housing that are affordable for people at the lowest income level in our nation. Red is not good. I want to clarify that. And orange is not much better. Had you seen this map 10 or 15 years ago, it would have looked very different. You would have seen red on the coast, and that would be the end of it. This problem is creeping into the interior of the country. During my conversations with Secretary Donovan last week, we were comparing notes because we've both been traveling around and visiting states all over the country. And he said something to me that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up, which was, and he's been doing housing for a long time. He was in New York City and then obviously in the federal government. He said, I've never been more concerned about the state of housing in the United States than I am right now. So the challenges that we have been experiencing in this region are spreading. I'm actually heading straight to the airport to give a talk in Iowa tomorrow, and then I'm going to be in Kansas next week. These are not places you think of as places with acute housing challenges, but they do have challenges. And so, we will be leaders in this. We've been in this soup for a while, and people are looking to us to say, what can we do to avoid this? This is a list of some of the cities that I've visited. I never, ever would have imagined that I'd be going to all of these cities. I thought I'd be in Seattle and San Francisco and New York and talk about homelessness, and that would be the end of it. So homelessness is becoming a central concern, political and societal concern all around the United States. And I'm one voice among many who's talking about this. I'm grateful for the opportunity, but this is really a clear and present danger to many cities in the United States. Initially, it was kind of fun to go to these cities, and now it's a little bit sobering because the reason they're inviting me here is because they have a problem and they're not really sure how to frame this and think about it and how to approach political solutions. In our region, you all know this story well. We have a deficit of housing, and that deficit grows every year as people move here and to take advantage of our beauty and the economic opportunities that exist here. Our housing has not kept up. In addition, and the executive mentioned this, the housing needs for people at 80% and below median income continue to rise. We are talking hundreds of thousands of units just in King County, much greater if you look at the Puget Sound region overall. Therefore, we need to get to work collectively to ensure that we close this gap. Failure to close the gap has lots of costs. Some of those costs are people we see on 3rd Avenue. Other costs are constrained economic viability, the inability of core functions in society to live and work in the communities that they serve. What I say is, when I'm in the middle of the country, I'll say, don't do what we did on the West Coast. Don't become a city where 3rd grade teachers and nurses and service workers can't live in your city. That's not a city from my perspective. We need to do this work. So I got involved as soon as I moved to the region in 2017 in community conversations around housing and homelessness. And I would lead these meetings and say, and I'd read the Seattle Times and I'd watch press accounts and say, I don't think we really understand what's going on as a community. Competing narratives were all over the media and in conversations and cocktail parties about the causes of homelessness. We continued to spend money. The problem got worse, and people throw their hands up and say, I don't think we know what's going on. Why are we doing this? The work we're doing is good. The problem kept getting bigger and bigger. And so what I wanted to do with this book was not to necessarily break new ground, but to translate what we've known in the academic literature for a long time for a general audience, such that someone could walk around Seattle and say, what the heck is going on here? And at least have a little glimpse into what the research says about the causal drivers of homelessness. And the goal then is to then focus our time, attention, and resources on the fundamental drivers such that we can put a dent in this problem. Okay. I also want to say to the people in the room who are doing this work every day, this is super, super hard work. Building a couple units of housing will not end homelessness. People in crisis are at times very difficult to serve. And so for those of you who do this every day, I want to say thank you. You are an underappreciated part of our society, but absolutely necessary. So thank you. So if we want to talk about what causes homelessness, it turns out that that's a really complicated question. We know that there are causes at the individual level. We know that there are causes at the community level, and this ends up being where some of the confusion comes in. We also ask people experiencing homelessness, why are you homeless? And when we do, we get very blunt answers. My boyfriend beat me up and I ran, and now I'm homeless. I made some poor choices. I drink too much. I got in a fight with my roommate. She kicked me out. We have to honor these explanations because they're the truth. One of the struggles I had when wanting to write this book is I'm coming in saying it's the housing market, and here's a woman next to me saying it's domestic violence. Okay. The point is that neither of those are right or wrong. They're both right. What we need to understand is how personal circumstance lays on top of structure to produce this crisis. Okay. The way we do that in the book is to draw a distinction between what we call precipitating events and root causes. Both are important. Imagine a game of musical chairs, 10 friends, 10 chairs. The leader starts the music, everyone walks around, leader pulls one chair out, music stops, everyone scrambles for a chair, and by definition, someone loses. In this case, it was Mike, who was on crutches after spraining his ankle. If we asked Mike after the game, Mike, why did you lose? What would he say? I had a bad ankle. And everyone would nod. The cause of Mike's not having a chair was the fact that he had a bad ankle. But if you ask a different question, why didn't Mike have a chair? It's because we didn't have 10 chairs. This is exactly what's happening in Seattle, in San Francisco, in Los Angeles. When housing is scarce, it accentuates vulnerabilities and produces homelessness. And then all of us are guilty of this, walking by someone on the street saying, of course Joe's homeless, he's addicted. What we're missing with that simple analysis is the broader structure that's producing these conditions. So one thing I've learned about writing a book about homelessness is you get lots and lots of angry emails. I'm sure for the elected leaders in this room, that's nothing for you. You're used to that. I'm not used to it. So initially I'm like, what in the world? 4-letter words, not love, I'll tell you. Okay. I don't want you to leave here and say, Greg doesn't think drugs are a problem. They are. If you're addicted, if you're mentally ill, if you're poor, you're far more likely to experience homelessness. There's no doubt about that. The fentanyl crisis in Seattle scares me. Okay. But we also know that people are using and abusing drugs in every community in the United States, and they don't have the same experience with homelessness. So what is going on? We ask a pretty simple question in the book, which is why do rates of homelessness vary so widely throughout the United States? Why do Seattle and San Francisco have 5 times the per capita homelessness of Chicago? It's huge variation. The idea being that if we can answer that question with some level of credibility, it should tell us something about the fundamental driver of the crisis and then allow us to focus our time and attention and resources in that direction. The thesis is tight housing markets accentuate vulnerabilities and produce homelessness. And these individual vulnerabilities that get a whole lot of print in the Seattle Times are really a sorting mechanism. They're identifying the people who are most likely to lose housing when housing is scarce. Okay? Playing a game of musical chairs for housing in Seattle with people from Amazon is like playing musical chairs with Usain Bolt. Okay. Fastest man in the world, he's going to win every time. And I have lots of Amazon friends. They're smart, they have resources, they're going to find housing. They're going to find housing. Okay. So I want to demonstrate for you quickly that we've got huge variation. 5 times, high to low jurisdictions. Some places count at the city level, some count at the county level. It doesn't matter. It's a bureaucratic nuance. But what you'll see is New York, DC, San Francisco, and Boston are about 5 times Indianapolis. And for places like ours that count at the county level, LA County, Santa Clara, King, Multnomah are about 5 times Hillsborough, which is Tampa. Okay, so this variation is not 20% different, 30% different, it's 5 times. Huge variation, we should want to understand why that exists. So I don't have a lot of time, so I'm not going to go through all the arguments in the book, but the logic of the book is we'll take all the conventional explanations for homelessness, test to see if it helps us understand this relationship. If it doesn't, we cross it off and move to the next one. And spoiler alert, the housing market's going to play an important role in this. Okay, so the first one is poverty. Homelessness is obviously a poverty problem. If you are poor, you're far more likely to experience homelessness. But what's interesting is when you plot rates of poverty and rates of homelessness, what you see is a negative relationship. Places with really, really high rates of poverty have lower rates of homelessness, which is a head scratcher because I just told you that poverty causes homelessness. So what's going on here? My interpretation of this slide is not that poverty doesn't matter, it absolutely does. But the consequences of poverty in an affluent community are different than they are elsewhere. Being poor in Seattle has different consequences than being poor in Detroit, the most impoverished city in the United States. Why? Because the housing market's very different. Serious mental illness and drug use, this is when the angry emails get started. There are people experiencing serious mental illness and addiction in every state in the nation at varying rates, and that variation bears almost zero relationship to rates of homelessness. Again, this doesn't mean that addiction and mental health and mental illness aren't important. They absolutely are. But the context in which it happens really, really matters. Okay. The other thing that's really, really important when we talk about substance use disorders and behavioral health disorders is we are creating a behavioral health crisis by not housing people. Okay. We know from the research behavioral health disorders clearly can cause homelessness, but we also know that homelessness causes behavioral health disorders. I say, and this is not a joke, if I were living on the streets of Seattle, I would medicate. And it wouldn't be the red wine, that's my go-to medication right now. The trauma associated with homelessness is severe. The fact that people would develop behavioral health disorders as a result shouldn't surprise any of us. So if we see Joe on the street and we walk by, we don't know if that addiction is the cause of Joe's homelessness or if that's just the result of being on the street for a year, not being fed, not bathing, not getting medical care, etc. Last individual factor is race. We can't talk about homelessness without talking about race. Black, brown, indigenous people are 3 to 4 times overrepresented in the homeless population. But what's interesting is when you plot the demographic makeup of a city, it does nothing to help explain regional variation. So what's going on here? The purpose of the slide is to say that race doesn't cause homelessness. Racism causes homelessness. Okay? The mere presence of people of color in a community doesn't produce homelessness. If it did, Chicago would have way more homelessness than Seattle, which is a disproportionately white city. Okay? The point is that structural racism in housing and healthcare and education and criminal justice, generation after generation, have produced conditions that allow and create disproportionate rates of homelessness among people of color in Seattle and in Topeka and in Chicago and in Boston. Okay? So none of these individual attributes or characteristics does a very good job of explaining our regional variation problems. We've got to keep looking. This is the cocktail party conversation portion of the speech. Have you ever heard this one? It's really warm on the West Coast, therefore we have lots of homelessness. Okay? Okay. We can't blame Mother Nature. As convenient as it is, we can't blame Mother Nature. Chicago's cold, LA's warm, of course LA's going to have homelessness. What about Boston? It's really cold in January in Boston. What about other jurisdictions in the South that are really warm that don't have high rates of homelessness? So it's a convenient narrative when you compare Chicago and LA, but if you step back out, again, we can't blame Mother Nature. Greg, if we weren't so generous, all these people wouldn't move here to experience homelessness. Okay? I'm guessing you probably have heard this one. I've heard this in so many communities around the country. This is the welfare magnet argument. This is not how magnets work. Every place can't be a recipient, even though they all think that they're the recipient. Okay? Margaret Kushel at University of California, San Francisco just published an awesome report on homelessness in California. And what did they find? 90% of the people experiencing homelessness in California are from California. Is there an anecdote to the contrary? Of course there is. We shouldn't legislate based on anecdote. This is a homegrown problem. We need to look in the mirror and acknowledge that we have created this. So the final category that we test is housing market characteristics. And this is where we start to see, for those of you statistics nerds out there, or people who took my class, which doesn't necessarily mean you're a statistics nerd. But anyway, there's more explanatory power here. This is rents and homelessness. Where rents are high, homelessness is high. Okay. No one's giving us a Nobel Prize for this. But this is far more convincing than anything else that we test in the book. A related variable is vacancy rates. When vacancy rates get below 5%, which is kind of the neutral point for vacancy, rental market vacancies, homelessness tends to be high. And so when people challenge me on this and say, this isn't a perfect predictor, I'll say, you're right, it's not. But it's pretty darn good. Give me a counterexample. Give me a place with really high rents and low vacancies that doesn't have a problem with homelessness. There isn't one, is the answer to that question. So ultimately, we should care about the housing market because a difficult housing market has huge consequences, homelessness being one of them. So why do we have this situation? Is this just simply a tech boom? A bunch of people moved here, blew up the housing market, now we've got this crisis? It's certainly part of the story, but it's not the only story, because there are plenty of fast-growing places throughout the United States that are not having the same experience with a housing crisis. This shows that a very modest relationship between population growth and change and rates of homelessness. This really surprised me when I ran it. So what I realized is that the demand side, the demand for housing is certainly important, but we also need to think about the supply of housing. Okay, so supply elasticity, if this is giving you indigestion after your lunch, I apologize. It's a super important concept in economics. The idea being when prices change, how much housing is supplied. We know from urban economists that the two drivers of supply elasticity are the regulatory environment, how easy is it to build, and topography. If you have mountains and water, it's harder to build. If you combine challenging topography with a really strict regulatory environment, San Francisco, California, you're going to end up with a really, really inelastic housing market. And when you combine population growth with a really inelastic housing market, what do you get? You get a housing crisis and an associated crisis of homelessness. So this is, think about elasticity on the left axis as supply of of housing, and the bottom axis being demand for housing. That upper right quadrant is really interesting to me, which is places that have grown really rapidly, just as fast as Seattle and Boston and San Francisco, but have had very different housing market experiences. Why? Because they built a ton of housing. Now, they may have built that housing through sprawl and other ways that we might not find that interesting, but it demonstrates that housing supply does have an impact. Those numbers in parentheses, if you can read them, are their vacancy rates. The bottom right quadrant in which we find ourselves is the perfect storm for a housing and homelessness crisis. It's tragic, but perfectly predictable. So ultimately, when we think about how we respond as a region, how we respond as a nation, I would argue that many of our faults, and if we were to look, talk about the sins of policymaking over the last few generations, it's really been a lack of scale. We know what interventions work. What we've not done is scaled them. Okay, as we learned in Atlanta last week with Daniel and colleagues, housing first works. If you don't scale it, it's not going to end homelessness. Affordable housing works. It reduces the flow of people into homelessness. We know that from lots and lots of research, but we've not scaled. Okay. People will then say, well, then Greg, what kind of housing do we need? The answer to that is D, all the above, if this were an exam. Do we need developers to build private market rate housing? Absolutely. And we need elected leaders and policymakers to ensure that an environment exists that allows them to build. This is when I get it. Yep. So this is when I get accused of being a shill for corporate interests, because I do believe we need to build more market rate housing. Okay. We also need workforce and affordable housing, and we need supportive housing. I'm a former investor, and so when I stand in front of groups of people who invest capital, I'll say, I did this for 17 years, and I can tell you there is not a sole private market solution to the problem of homelessness. That's when I get accused of being a socialist. So I get it from both sides. Okay. Government can create an environment in which housing can be built, and government can also generate the resources needed to support households that need support, either through subsidizing the development of housing or subsidizing households as they try to access housing. We can do two things at once. I firmly believe that. And when people say, Greg, I'm not sure housing will fix this, Joe is a mess. I've heard people say this directly to me. I'm not sure housing is going to work. I'll say, you know why I know it works? Is because we've done it. The federal government, Republicans and Democrats, said we don't want veterans to experience homelessness. And what do? We funded programs through the VA and HUD to ensure that that doesn't happen. And we cut veteran homelessness by 50% in 10 years. Okay. So the argument that you see on social media and in the news that these programs don't work is false. We just did it. What we've not done is scaled or used that logic more broadly, and therefore we're continuing to deal with this problem. It's not because the interventions don't work. So what do we need? We need operating investments. We need a crisis response system. We have a moral obligation to do that, but we also need to construct housing. And some of that's going to be market rate and some's going to be affordable or supportive. And we need to think about our land use, and this is when the other angry emails start to come in. Okay, and you're all very familiar with these debates. I'm assuming that you've been the recipient of some of these, Executive Constantine. So I want to close on this point, which is who is responsible for this? Federal government, local government, public, private? Do we have short-term, long-term? The answer is we need all of these. And that's daunting because this is complicated. If this were easy, we would have fixed it a long time ago. We have lots of smart people who are focused on this. Okay, so this is very hard work. But ultimately, we need people in the boat together, rowing together to make sure that we can move forward. And I fundamentally believe, given the talent and the know-how and the experience and the goodwill of people in this room, that we can fundamentally make a difference. And my hope is that in 10 years, we're looking back saying, the good work made a difference. My fear is that if we don't make these changes, we're going to look back and say 2024 was the glory days. And I'm very, very concerned about that. We need to do something different going forward if we want a different result. Thanks so much. Thank you, HDC.
Thank you, Greg. Now, please welcome to the stage HDC board member and executive director of LISC Puget Sound, Lauren McGowan, to close us out and introduce the final award for today, this year's Public Sector Champion Award winners.
Thank you, Greg and Executive Constantine, for your insights and powerful words. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren McGowan, Executive Director of LISC Puget Sound and a proud HDC board member. LISC is a national community development organization working in Washington to advance housing, racial, and economic justice. I'm thrilled to be here today with our 2024 Housing Equity Accelerator Fellows. Through an incredible partnership with the Amazon Housing Equity Fund, we are building the capacity of emerging developers and improving access to capital to help our region address this crisis. We wanted them to know just how amazing all of the HDC community is. Tackling the housing crisis requires effective public and private partnerships, as we heard from Gregg. And we're so lucky to have so many of those right here in our region. I'm excited to be here to present today's Public Sector Champion Award. The Public Sector Champion Award is given annually to recognize individuals or entities within the public sector who have shown incredible leadership and made significant contributions to affordable housing. I am so pleased to present this year's award to Mayor Bruce Harrell and the City of Seattle. Under Mayor Harrell's leadership, and alongside the collaborative efforts of the Mayor's Office, the Office of Housing, and the City Council, Seattle has seen remarkable progress in affordable housing funding. Revenue sources like the payroll expense tax, mandatory housing affordability, and the housing levy have played pivotal roles in the development of thousands of new affordable housing. And we need them all, both the housing and the revenue. The City of Seattle's steadfast commitment to these essential investments has ensured a consistent funding stream for the creation and preservation of much-needed affordable homes, alongside vital support services and operational funding. The $970 million renewal of the Seattle Housing Levy was a tremendous victory, and it underscores the city's unwavering dedication to fostering a more inclusive and equitable Seattle. This demonstrated collaboration with Mayor Harrell and his team, alongside support from the Office of Housing and City Council leaders, ensured the significant victory that you heard about today. Mayor Harrell is in Korea, but we are honored to be joined by key leaders who have partnered with HDC in this effort. I'm excited to be here with Housing Director Winkler Chin to accept this award for the incredible partnerships, and thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Lauren, and congratulations, Director Winkler Chin, and to the Office of Housing, as well as Mayor Harrell. And with that, I want to thank all of you for your generous support of HDC and the HDC of the future. Gregg, an incredible amount of thanks to you for challenging us to scale solutions, and we are ready to partner with all of you as we go into 2024. And with that, for the table captains in the room, please be sure that your envelope is handed over to HDC staff as you exit, or you can leave it at the table. I think that's important. Also asking for name tags. Be sure that you can leave them at the table or give them to an HDC staff person. Please remember, we have a lot of work to do in 2024, and we look forward to partnering with you in doing it all. Thank you.
Thank you for your support. Have a great day.